Start tonight's program. This is a reminder that this episode will address various topics related to mental health, addiction, and a reminder about multiple sclerosis. These may be sensitive to some of our viewers. If your discretion is advised. We remind you to please consult your doctor, your mental health professional, your outreach group, your sponsor, or specialist before adopting any change to your dietary, physical, and/or mental health regime. And now this. The week of September 5th through the 11th is National Suicide Prevention Week. People have become increasingly comfortable talking about their mental health, particularly this past year. But the topic of suicide, when it comes up, is still scary for many people to think about. It's time to deepen the conversation. Some are afraid that by asking someone if they're having thoughts of suicide, it will put the idea in their head or push them to take their lives, which research shows is not true. Some are worried that they won't know what to do or how to help if the person tells them, yes, I am thinking about suicide. It's only by learning more about what leads someone to suicide, the ways we can help to prevent it, and what resources are available, and not being afraid to ask when we're worried about someone or for help when we need it ourselves, that we can empower our communities to address this leading cause of death. We all have mental health. It's time we take the next step, ask more deeply about what someone is experiencing, and if we need it, find help together. Together, we can help stop suicide. If you need a resource to talk to by way of crisis, or if you are having suicidal ideation, call 1-800-273-TALK. It's 1-800-273-8255, or you can text the word TALK to 741-741. And a quick note about something that has been paramount in my mind and heart over the last 9 months. The National MS Society is a collective of passionate individuals who want to do something about MS now, to move together towards a world free of multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is comprised of unpredictable and often disabling flare-ups of the central nervous system. Such flare-ups disrupt the flow of information within the brain and between the brain and the body. The National MS Society is the largest private funder of MS researchers in the world, investing more than $1 billion to date. MS stops people from moving, but the National MS Society exists to make sure that MS doesn't. To contact the National MS Society, please call 1-800-344-4867. Once again, 1-800-344-4867. Or go to their website, nationalmssociety.org. Also of note, we're still raising money for the National MS Society through A Venture to a Cure's fundraising page at rebrand.ly/A Venture to a Cure. Again, rebrand.ly/A Venture to a Cure. This was a page that was created in conjunction with the virtual MS Walk that took place on May 1st, and this effort will last through the end of the month. Thank you to all of you who have donated money to this amazing organization. It touches me in so many ways, and over the 1 million people in this country that have multiple sclerosis, and we appreciate all of you. And on that, let's begin. This driveway is about 10 to 15 feet long. And there was a time in my life where I couldn't walk more than this sort of distance without needing to sit down, especially if I was traveling. It was because my life and my health was at such a decrepit low, whether by way of my obesity, my class 4 morbid obesity, my alcoholism, and my compulsive gambling. It's also because I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't exhibiting self-care. Tonight, we're going to talk about the telltale signs on when we need to establish more self-care with ourselves, and some of the tactics and strategies we can employ to do that, because this is the venture forward. Good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be. And I notice I have the wrong graphic up. Wow. Get rid of that graphic and bring up the graphic that tells everybody who I am. I am John Venturini. I'm a recovering addict of overeating, obesity, alcoholism, and compulsive gambling. And it's an honor and pleasure to see all of you tonight on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch for the start of Season 3 of The Venture Forward, which has basically been the story of my life, but the story of many other lives. We are all in this together. And what I've realized over the last year and change is that we're battling a lot of the same problems. We're battling a lot of the same crises. We are battling a lot of everything. In whatever sort of world or euphemism we want to talk about the last 18, 19 months, this is who we are. And this is what we do here. And we could take one of two directions. We can come up with a pathway forward, a venture forward, or go dwell in the past. And say hello to all of you on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. And we start with Marcus. Marcus, how are you? Hope you're doing well. We got Jaden over on YouTube. Hope you're doing well as well. Paul, co-host of VF Talks that's on Friday nights at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. Good to see you, my friend. And we got Jamie. How are you over on YouTube? Hope you're doing well. And we have Sue over on YouTube. Good evening to you. Hope you are doing well. And we have Sammy Superstar over on YouTube. And I hope you're having a great evening as well. And Paul has a very funny comment. I'm going to bring it up. Paul says, you're a recovering addict, and now you're just making us all addicted to your show. You're making new addicts, JV. How could you? I'll tell you how I can. What I'm here to do is help. I am here to help all of you. And the thing is, I am honored to be able to do this for all of you, because this is the story I've lived. These are the lessons I've learned. And if I could share that with all of you, well, then that's what this show is all about. So Jamie goes on and says, yeah, we are enabling this streaming addiction because we are addicted to the show. Haha. I'm glad you're addicted to the show. I'm addicted to all of you. I'm muchly happy to see all of you. And oh man, just before we start the talk about self-care, I have to say this real quickly. I can't get over how great of people you are. All of you. Whether it's the people I've met in the recovery groups, whether it's a question of the live streaming groups I've joined, you guys are incredible people. And this is absolutely an honor to be able to share this information with you, to share my life's journey with you. Because, again, we're all in this together. So, I can't get, oh, man. All right, so let's go back to what the opening was, and the fact that I couldn't walk more than 5 to 10 feet without needing to sit down. It's a story we've talked about on the show various times. It's a very important story for the sense that it really was the first straw that had to be removed, in the sense that in order for me to live a life that is going to make any sense, in order for me to live a life, I don't know, to get to my 45th or 50th birthday, I have to make sure that at least I'm healthy physically. And at 480 pounds, I certainly wasn't that. So it was in the middle of Raleigh-Durham Airport, down in North Carolina, that I had what could best be described as a nervous breakdown. But I think pursuant to that nervous breakdown, I guess the end result of that nervous breakdown was the fact that I realized I had to do something about this now. This cannot wait another second forward. It could not wait another day, another week, another month, another year. It had to be taken now. Meaning I had to start coming up with a plan. And we're going to talk about the importance of creating a plan in mere minutes here. But a plan that basically came to the realization that the things that I was doing was serving no purpose. It was destroying me little by little, but it was serving no purpose whatsoever. So I had to take that step to say, okay, my self-care has to be a lot better. Did I use the term self-care back in January of 2019? Of course not. Of course not. But I had to do something to fix this, and to fix it now. That is absolutely right. Do it now or die. That's exactly, there is, as I say on my board, as I have a bunch of adages on this board, in addition to the weight I've lost, and the number of days I've been tracking, and the number of days I've been sober, I have adages. One of the adages is that there is no alternative. When you're 480 pounds, you're class 4 morbidly obese, you have a BMI of nearly 70. There is no alternative. It is life or death now. Do it now or die, exactly. So how do I do that? I obviously know the mechanics. I lost the weight twice before. I went from 425 to 185 and then 440, and it's a battle that I've been living most of my life. The really strange thing is, maybe it's not so strange, is that a lot of people are dealing with morbid obesity or high weight fluctuations of tens and hundreds, and not just a 10 or a 20. It is a very widely spread problem in our society. And I was proof positive of that. I was absolutely proof positive of that. So, anyhow, realizing that there were other mechanics at play, realizing that there were roadblocks and things that were pushing me in front of things, that was a problem. I wasn't taking care of me. I was taking care of my addiction. I was taking care of the things that were causing me early death, and not taking care of me. Because if I don't take care of me, how the heck can I take care of anyone else? I grow to realize over that time that the people that were in this life, the people that were part of my inner circle, so to speak, weren't the best people that should be in my inner circle. The places, the things, all of that needed a serious re-examination. And over the next few episodes, we're going to talk about exactly what that is. These are things we did not exactly talk about in the first 2 seasons. I wanted to wait for some time, but we're going to start talking about it because it's time for me to start talking about it. Without question. Couple more comments. 325 and on diabetic pills and on high blood pressure pills, and nothing wrong here, Ma. LOL. It's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. And your numbers and your, basically is wrong. So you obviously understand that. But it takes a hard realization to say, there's something going on here. I can't fit this. I can't fit this seatbelt on an airplane. I can't fit in a restaurant booth. It could be something as minimal as that. It could be something as more grotesque in a sense that I have sleep apnea, or I'm having a hard time breathing, or I'm having a hard time walking 10 feet. Taking all of this in, realizing that there is a problem more than a number on a scale, more than a body fat percentage, is how we get to a place. Making realization, but to taking a very hard look at that and a very hard plan to go past that, to fix this, which is not easy. Oh, far from any stretch of imagination, this is not easy. But we are the most important person here. If we don't take care of ourselves, there is no one else we could take care of. And when we start thinking about it that way, going back to the board, there is no alternative, it starts shedding light on it. It really does. Jamie says, ignoring the problem and hoping it will go away does no good. That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. You can hope it goes away, but chances are, I'm no doctor, as my disclaimer says, no doctor, no dietitian, no what. But if you're going to seek help and you're seeing a doctor and they're saying, hey, your numbers are off or your levels are off, here's a chance for you to fix that. If you don't fix that, you're not going to be in a good place. Sammy says you need to take action. That's absolutely right. You need to take action. Instead of just reacting and living in the past, we have to take action. If we don't, there'll be nothing for us to take action on because our state of health will keep on going down a very slippery slope. So what's self-care? We talk about self-care, but there are so many concepts and so many facets to self-care that we should talk about that. And as I talk about these things, I will start talking about how these pieces, these elements started becoming part of my life. The importance of self-care. If I would say there's anything that is the underarching premise of this show, whether it was the very first episode we did last year to now, there is a very high importance of self-care. We must never lose sight of that. So tonight we're going to talk about how I got here. Kind of started hinting at it now. We're going to talk about the importance of self-care. We're going to spend a little time about journaling and meditation to ease the mind. There was a graphic on the countdown. That is a journal entry from May of last year. We'll talk about that. My journal is not just me writing down ideas or writing down gratitude lists. It's poetry. We'll talk about that too. And ongoing, we'll take your questions and comments. So there are 5 elements here. I'm going to go back to Maine for a second. When we think about self-care, when we think about the elements that are requisite in self-care, there are 5 key elements, but then there are things that we must never lose sight of, in the sense that if we don't do these sort of things and we don't have a plan, it's one thing to observe, but then it's the second thing to say, as Sammy said before, you need to take action. There's a follow-up comment to that and said, you need a plan of recovery to take action. If we don't have a plan of recovery step by step, it will fail. That's absolutely right. It's absolutely right. It's more than just taking action. It's coming up with a plan. So let's talk about that. So the first element here, and there are 5 key elements in the sense that there are practices for self-care, and this is from Very Well Mind, a great site as far as self-care and that sort of advice. I definitely recommend it, and I can provide you links to this after the show. But I would say the first thing that's important is physical health. We must be cognizant of what our physical health is, whether it's a question of going to see a doctor on a regular basis or whatnot. We have to stay on top of these sort of things. And there are things that we have to ask ourselves in order to make that sort of concerted effort. Hey, I got to start seeing this doctor, or I have to start coming up with this plan, so on and so forth. How are you taking care of your needs is the first question you have to ask yourself. Are you taking care of your needs? Or were you like me and closet eating at a fast food place and not giving a crap of what you're putting in your body? How are you taking care of your needs? You have needs. You have physical needs. How are you taking care of them? To come up with some sort of educated answer to that is a step forward. From a guest we had in season 1 with Christina Grabnekas, are you getting adequate sleep? Sleep is very important. Sleep is very fundamental. We talk about why our health may not be in the best place, whether physically or mentally. It goes back to sleep. We need to get proper sleep at night. If we don't do that, we stand a chance of doing things that will either, 1, biochemically be a disaster, or 2, just be a disaster altogether. So sleep is very important. How's your diet? That's been an overarching piece of this journey over the last 2+ years. How's your diet? Are you tracking your food? Do you have a strategy about what you're going to do with food? Do you have a caloric plan, a macronutrient plan, whatever diet you want to take, an elimination diet, what have you? How's your diet? Are you taking charge of your health? When I say that, are you seeing a doctor? Are you getting your levels checked once a year or twice, once every other year or whatnot? Are you doing that sort of thing? Because if you're not doing that, how are you going to know what you're doing is right versus not right? What you're doing is leaning the needle in the right direction versus not covering things that may be a problem later on down the road. The last question, are you getting enough exercise? Exercise is part of it. If we're not active, we're not doing the best we can for our body. And there's enough of the measured sort of ground I've taken over the last 2+ years, but the weight didn't start falling off until I started exercising. And exercising, I wouldn't say rigorously, but I would say starting to exercise. There's a lot of things that could be said about physical fitness and what that means for everything else in this picture. I'll go back to Maine for a second. If we're not taking consideration of that, then we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle figured out. We have to do that. We absolutely have to. So physical health, without question, is the first piece to this. Some comments. Marilyn says, you need to see the doctor so you know your baseline. Absolutely. You need to know what your baseline is and then work towards improving that baseline. Eats a high protein diet once a day at 6 p.m. Losing weight needs are being met by losing weight. I take 1 kilo at a time, like 1 day at a time. That's a beautiful adage. 1 kilo at a time. In my case, 1 pound at a time. It's important. If you have some sort of measured sort of adage in the back of your mind, some sort of measured plan, you're working towards something. The mental piece of this, as we're going to talk about in minutes, is very important as far as our self-care. Jamie says, baseline is important. Yeah. Without a baseline, it's very hard to get any sort of plan or any sort of movement or any sort of understanding of where we are, where we need to go, and what our next plan is. We don't have to have a bona fide goal at the end of this. We just need to keep on moving the needle more and more and more. That's been my plan altogether. These tally marks, weren't that many tally marks in the beginning. But it wasn't like, oh, well, I'll get 250, 300 tally marks tomorrow. Nah, that's one, unrealistic. Two, if that was the case, there is a much bigger problem here. But then the third thing is, it is a slow process. 1 day at a time, 1 step at a time, 1 foot in front of the other. So physical health is definitely part of it. I think the next important thing to talk about is that of social health. We have to be very on top of our social self-care, our social health. If we don't have that, then there's a lot of other things going on. We're not interacting. We don't have that sort of frame of reference around us that allows us to grow. Let's talk about that for a second. 3 questions you want to think about is, 1, how much time are you spending interacting with others? Now, given the events of the last 19 months, it's very hard sometimes to talk about face-to-face because when we're in quarantine and lockdown and whatnot, kind of hard to do that. But are we at least interacting? Are we sending messages? Are we spending Zoom calls, FaceTimes, what have you? Are you getting enough time with your friends, face-to-face or otherwise? And then the last piece, which is important to the first 2 questions, is what are you doing to nurture these relationships? It's one thing to put in a call and say, hey, how's it going? And then be radio silent for the next 6 months. We have to nurture these relationships in order for these relationships to, I guess, say, bear fruit or whatnot, for these relationships to grow, these relationships to become the things we need in our life to live the best life we can. It just goes without saying. Some comments. Marilyn says, not only tracking your food, but checking your water and to stay hydrated is important. Yes. The rule of thumb that I've been going by is that, you should have 1 ounce of water for every 2 pounds of weight you have. So if you're 200 pounds, you should have 100 ounces of water. If you're 300 pounds, 150 ounces, so on and so forth. It's not a bona fide rule. There are exceptions to that. But more times than not, you talk to any sort of doctor that works with bariatric medicine or nutritionists, and they're gravitating to the 1 ounce for every 2 pounds sort of mindset. Sue says, my baseline stated everything was excellent. Problem couldn't breathe and walk. So journey began, was able to give up the problem. It's the thing. Sometimes the answer is not quantitative. The answer is qualitative or based on qualitative need. If you can't breathe and you can't walk, there's obviously something wrong. So it's then a question of why am I not able to walk? Why am I not able to breathe? And it takes work with doctors and whatnot to get down to it, whether it's work with your primary care physician, your PCP, or any sort of specialist. We kind of have to go down that road. So the social health piece is very important. The next piece, which is somewhat related, is that of mental health. Mental health is very important. Without the mental health piece, we're kind of basically ignoring a lot of this. Things that you need to kind of keep in the back of your mind. 1, self-compassion and acceptance. Not beating yourself up, living in the present, not dwelling upon yesterday, learning from yesterday, but not dwelling upon it, and not dwelling upon the future. We talk about in this sort of guise. If we dwell upon the past, that's depression. If we dwell upon the future, that's anxiety. So we have to live in the present. We learn from the past, but we don't dwell upon it. We accept it. We construct a plan. We move forward. The next question is, are you doing things to mentally stimulate you? Are you doing things like, as corny as this sounds, are you doing a crossword puzzle? Are you doing things that are basically energizing your mind, energizing your brain, energizing your retention skills, all of that? Because you have to keep the brain active. If we don't keep our brain active, we start losing that. Third question, which is kind of related to the previous question, is the sense that, are you doing things proactively to stay mentally sharp? For me, it's basically doing a crossword, I would say 4 or 5 days out of the week. It's playing Scrabble and doing things that are more word games and mind games to keep that sort of thing moving along. Some comments in the sense that I was there too, Sue. Now I'm moving along pretty fast now. Yeah, you move at a pace that makes the most sense for you. And it's not something that is the same pace for everybody. You work at a pace that makes the most sense. And again, it's a question of, well, if you have a massive amount of weight to lose, it's always good to talk to a doctor or a nutritionist or a dietitian. Sue says, my point was I had to go further into the issue, which I did, and took an action. That's exactly right, Sue. There's nothing wrong in doing research. It's nothing wrong in being the most educated patient you could possibly be. God only knows how much education I did when I walked into a dietitian's office or a nutritionist's office saying, hey, I've done this twice before. I kind of know what I'm doing. I just want to make sure that this makes sense based on the latest science that's out there. There's nothing wrong with that. Because at the end of the day, who are you taking care of? You're taking care of you. So do everything you can to take care of you in the best possible way possible. There's only one you, right? First mask analogy of the season, which will happen like 500 other times. When the cabin pressure in the airplane goes down and masks fall, who do you cover with the mask first to get the oxygen? With the cabin pressure gone, you cover yourself first, and then you take care of the rest of the row. You have to take care of yourself first, without question. Which means doing your research, doing your homework, absolutely. But it's on you. It's absolutely on you. So we talked about the social care, the mental care. I guess the next piece, which is a little bit, I would say, understood one way by certain people and then understood another way by others, is that of spiritual care. I'll bring that up for a second. I am personally, and I will throw out a whole disclaimer on this, I was raised Roman Catholic. These days, I would say I'm more of a universal Unitarian, but even then, I'm more of just a spiritual, non-denominational sort of guy. But that's not to say that I believe in one specific God or one specific deity. Moreover, this comment or this next chapter has nothing to do per se with religion. It has everything to do with your connection with yourself and the universe. So, with that disclaimer fully made, let's talk about that. So as soon as I say that, the first words that are up there says God, right? A good orderly direction. But that's what I refer to as God. We need a direction that is orderly and good, and basically is the same sort of tenets of all the major religions and all the religious and spiritual sciences that are out there. Spiritually driven, not theological per se, right? Do unto others, all that stuff. Things that are common within Judeo-Christian, Islam, what have you, right? Scientology even. These are things that are consistent across the board. We must hold that to ourselves. The next piece of that is, what do you ask yourself about your life and experience? To take a ongoing sort of barometer reading and feeling what we are doing in this life and what we want to do in this life, and come up with a list of things that we want to try to get out of this life is healthy. It's something I do. It's something I journal about. It's basically taking care of that. But in the guise of, at this point in my life, I'm looking more at what I can do to help others. That's why this project has been so important to me over the last year and change. Not to say that everything on that list is just that, but it's part of my life. It's part of my experience. The last piece of that is, are you engaging in practices that are fulfilling by way of meditation, etc.? Meditation is very important. Meditation is something that we really need to do a reset on every day. Sometimes, in my case, twice a day. We have to do that. If we don't meditate, if we don't get ourselves more centered with the universe and just free ourselves from the day-to-day or second-to-second minutia that's in our way for a second and just escape for a second to get that sort of understanding, then we're not doing this right. And that's either by way of spirituality or religion or just meditation, right? We have to do that. Quick comment. My higher power is a gentleman. When I'm about to go do my own thing without God's care, his hands are off and allow me to go mess things up. LMAO. when the train goes off the tracks, he basically says, it's on you. Got it. If you think about it, when we don't have that sort of universal grounding, that's what happens to us. Whether it's by way of, God or what have you. When we don't have that sort of universal understanding, that's the veriest thing that can happen. That's a very good point. So we talked about the spiritual. We talked about mental. We talked about social. I guess one of the most important pieces that we haven't talked about yet is that of emotional. So when we talk about emotional health, our emotions are very important. And it could be a question, we can talk about this for days, about how generationally it's something that we kind of shuffle under the rug when we talk about older generations. It's something within my generation and the generation after me and the generation after that, where emotional health is very important. We have to stay on top of this because a lot of the things that affect us are geared and driven from our emotional state. It's just a fact, right? And there are things we have to consider as far as our emotional self-care. So what is that? Do we have a confidant, a partner, a close friend, or even a sponsor to discuss how we feel? We need that sort of connection, right? And that may sound like something, well, I really need to rely on someone to do this. Well, yeah. It goes back to the sort of thing is, we don't do this by ourselves. We don't do it alone. We have to do it within people that we trust, people that we really care about, and they care about us. In a case of a confidant or a partner or a close friend, these are people we care about. And these are people that obviously care about us, if they're willing to be there for our emotional self-care. I guess the next piece of that is, do you have healthy ways to process your emotions? And that's not an easy question. When we think about healthy ways to process the emotions, it can go back to the things we talked about by way of meditation, but it could talk about things like yoga. It could talk about things of how to get that sort of decompression when we're really amped up and really stressed. We have to have healthy ways to process our emotions. That's important. The third piece therein is, do you do things to help you feel recharged? And that goes back to the social care in my case, because being extroverted, ENFP, we're doing Myers-Briggs here, but I feel recharged when I hang out with my friends, whether virtually in live streams or whatnot, or meeting them up in person, all of that. It's part of this. It's definitely part of this. If I get a chance to recharge and be one with them, well, then that's the most important thing. It is absolutely the most important thing. So the emotional self-care is just as important as the other self-care topics we talked about before. Within all of that, though, we must start thinking to ourselves, hey, well, we need to start thinking about what we need to do in case the proverbial, going back to the comment before, proverbial train goes off the tracks. We have to be very cognizant of that. So that's when we start talking about doing something like developing a self-care plan. Self-care plan, we talk about, within the recovery community, we talk about a recovery plan, a relapse plan, a self-care plan at brass tacks, 35,000 foot view. It's a very important thing we need to do for ourselves. We have to be very in mind of that sort of thing. And before I start talking about the concepts therein, let me bring up a couple comments that popped up here. Emotional self-care, I stay away from self-pity and be honest with myself for the best of my ability. That's right. We live in the present. We don't live in the past. We learn from the past, but we live in the present. Tomorrow's no guarantee. We live in the present. Jamie says, without connection to like-minded people, I would not have been able to stay sober. We can use this for anything we need help in, or just connection in general is healing. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's very important to be mindful of that. We need that connection. We need to hear stories of other people that are fighting the same things that we're fighting. So we have ideas. So we have inspiration that it can be done. Inspiration that we can get through this and we can live the best lives we can. It's important, Jamie. You're absolutely right. So as a self-care, what do I mean by a self-care plan? In the sense that there's 4 key areas. We have to assess the areas that need more attention and self-care. And we also have to be agile for course correction. We go back to what Sue said before in the sense that, or Marilyn and Sue actually said, in the sense that it's not obvious. Sometimes it's not quantitative. It could be qualitative. But we have to assess the areas that need more attention. If we have a hard time breathing and a hard time walking and a hard time sleeping, that may not be something that has a number attached to it, but we have to assess that. And we also have to be one with our doctors and our physicians to get a better sense of the best way to take care of that. The next piece of this is, don't tackle everything at once. Take it one thing at a time. We use a term in that of internal family systems about boxes. And when we try to tackle problems, we don't open up all of the boxes because all of the boxes are not related to the things that we're trying to figure out. Let's think about that for a second. If I open up all the boxes and now everything is scurried all over the place and it's just scattered rather, what happens? I lose sight of what I'm trying to figure out. I'm losing sight of what I'm trying to solve. But now I feel overwhelmed because all the boxes are open. So we have to take this one at a time. one box at a time, one step at a time. The third piece is scheduling time for you. God only knows how many times we have thrown other people, other places, other things in front of us and not have taken the requisite time that we need for our own self-care. We have to schedule time for us. If we don't do that, we stand a chance of neglecting us. And when we neglect us, well, you've seen how the rest of this story is gone. We have to take care of this. We take care of us. We cover ourselves with a mask first. We take care of everyone else in the row. Same thing. We have to schedule time for us. The fourth piece is something I've told you before. Your strength, love, and wisdom starts inside, so then you can spread it to so many. It goes back to scheduling time for you. It goes back to taking care of you. Your strength, love, and wisdom starts inside first. Get that taken care of and keep on nurturing that and growing that so you can grow it and nurture it for many others. That's what it's about. We talk about a project like the Venture Forward. That's exactly what that's about. I'm nurturing and strengthening that not only for me, I'm strengthening for all of you, but in that I'm basically going through this story and learning the things that have hurt me before. I cannot forget that. I must be always cognizant of that because there are many people that are fighting this fight too. About tackling the weight loss program. When I first started high protein diet, first step I removed was all the junk food. It's been nearly 3 months I've been following it and I'm winning. That's awesome. High protein diet is definitely a way to go. Some people call it keto. Some people call it watching your macronutrients. 3 months, 90 days, you're doing it. Very proud of you. Keep on doing it. Keep on doing it. Don't, you've built an incredible amount of momentum. Don't lose sight of that. Take care of you first, always. Next thing, I want to let go of most milk products a little bit at a time. Can't do it all of it at once. I'll go crazy, yeah. Giving up dairy and milk products is a hard one. Very much so. But again, it's going back to one step at a time. Always one step at a time. Jamie says, not good to let it all go at once for me either. And Jamie continues and says, I always feel that way. So do I. And so do many other people. Sue says, so I was able to have both hip replacements, took care of the walking situation, then continued to stop smoking, the breathing situation. Now I'm just working on the whatever. Working on the whatever and basically living the best life you can, Sue. Very proud of you for what you've done. You definitely rock. And Jamie took the words right out of my mouth. Sue, you definitely rock, without question. You all do. Everybody in this room, everybody that's watching right now, everybody that catches this on replay. For the fact that you're listening and wanting to work on your self-care, you definitely rock. The more that you work towards your own self-care, the more that you take care of yourselves, you will continue to rock, and more and more and more. So don't lose sight of that, all of you. One other comment. Yes, Jamie, back in the early days, like 4 years ago, I gave up everything and only ate protein. I was a bit emotionally distraught. Yeah, we got to be very careful of that. We also have to understand that there is a mental sort of connection to the food we eat, whether it's by way of dopamine or other biochemical sort of additions to the food that we eat. So we must be very cognizant of that. Sue said, I just celebrated another sober birthday. Congratulations, Sue. One day at a time, one step at a time, one foot in front of the other, Sue. Proud of you. So self-care plan, we talked about that. We talked about the fact that our strength, love, and wisdom starts inside. I guess the next piece of this is, well, what do I use site-wise to start figuring all of this out? And I listed a few sites here that are resonant with me that basically came in very handy back in 2019 and things I still use now. first piece, and again, this is more geared. Psychology Today, I believe, is a global site, but psychologytoday.com is for therapy providers. It's a great site. You can look up certain therapy types through a very comprehensive search engine. It's something that I've used to find therapists in my area, especially when I'm needing to find a new therapist. So with respect to that, it's something that's come in very handy without question. We could talk about different therapy types. In my case, internal family systems remains to be the clear therapy choice for me, but what's good for me is not good. It depends on what you find most useful in therapy. So definitely do your homework and figure that out for you. But psychologytoday.com will help you down those roads rather, no matter what. Couple more comments. Jamie, I was a basket case and said F it and went back eating garbage and felt guilt, remorse, fear, and a failure. The mind is a powerful thing to beat you down. Absolutely. When we start compounding things and start basically kicking ourselves over and over and over again, we could be our worst enemy. But we could also be our best advocate, right? It goes both ways. When we start taking care of ourselves, start basically subscribing to a model of self-care and not self-destruction, amazing things happen. Sue says the venture forward. Love you, Sue. Thank you. And then Jamie says the mind can create such madness if we allow it, for sure. It can also create such miracle if we allow it to do that too. As evil the mind can be, is also as incredible the mind can be as well. We must believe that there are always two sides to the coin. And the more that we do for that, the more that we put ourselves in a position to be in a better place, more times than not, we'll get there. It may not be automatic and things do happen. But if we put ourselves in a position to get there, we're at least doing the right thing to try to get there. I hand my mind over to God, Jamie. I did not like the idea, but dang it, it is working. Yeah. Allowing yourself to leave the mind of the conscious for a second and make it a part of the universe and grow off of that is the best thing you can do. The move from the conscious to the super conscious for a second and allow yourself to just empty and look at things from a 35,000 foot view without any sort of interruption is the best thing we can do, whether it is religious, theological, or spiritual. It's the best thing we could do. Jamie says many miracles too. Absolutely. Jamie says my higher power has my mind. Yes. And next comment was going into your mind is like walking in a bad neighborhood without supervision. allow your own mind, to basically, allow your higher power your own mind and basically, that sort of thing. For a second, I was trying to figure out HP and I think higher power. So sorry about that. So going back to the sites I use, because there are definitely parts of this, right? So as far as finding a therapist, psychologytoday.com is definitely a site I used. The next piece of this is the diet, which we've talked about before on the show. Lose It. LoseIt.com is a very important site I have used every day for over 900 days. I've put in every single food element in there, every single exercise element, and it keeps me honest. And the database of food that's in there is comprehensive. The database of exercise that's in there is comprehensive too. And what's great about Lose It is it can go with your Garmin or your Apple Watch or your Android watch as well. So it works and connects to all those different sort of protocols. Lose It is a very important thing just to keep everything honest. Truth be told, there are days where I allow myself a cheat day or I allow myself a food Sabbath, but I keep myself honest and I track everything. As long as I track everything, I'm keeping myself honest and I'm doing the best I can. If I don't track it, I stand a chance for disaster. That's the only sort of rule I remain very regimented about, is the fact that I have to track everything. So using something like Lose It or MyFitnessPal, there's a whole slew of them out there right now that can do this. My go-to continues to be Lose It. So loseit.com. And obviously they have the website, they have many apps that you can use. It connects to all those things we talked about before. The next piece of this will then be Headspace. Headspace.com. For someone who used to not meditate, going to a site like Headspace was very important for me to start emptying and just getting out of things for 5, 10, 20 minutes and just get myself that place where I can reset. Headspace was very important. Headspace has grown so much in the last 3 years, as far as giving programs for sleep, giving programs for meditation, giving programs for various other elements that can help you relax your mind, help thinking on a higher level without being stuck with the rigmarole of the day-to-day. Headspace has definitely come in handy. I will also say this. As far as the way I sleep at night, and I'm going to throw this for 1 second. I have become a bigger believer in white noise than I have in a very long time. I used to go to sleep with the TV on. And the TV on can basically give us distraction in the back of our mind. It could be just background noise. But I go to sleep with the sound of rain on leaves, and it puts me to sleep very quickly. But it also gives me something where I could just zen out. Now again, that might not be something for everybody, but I'm talking with my own personal experience. White noise and rain on leaves and that sort of thing has been very, very important to me. You can get a lot of those white noises from headspace.com as well. The last piece I wanted to talk about is journaling. Journaling has been such an important piece to this. Without the journaling, there would have never been a venture forward. That's God's honest truth. Without the journaling, there wouldn't be journal entries, there wouldn't be chapters of the book, there wouldn't be any of that. So to be able to write everything down and get my mind together has been very important. If you think about what we deal with on a day-to-day, and we think about the things we're trying to fix, we have to have a place where we can escape and just write things down, even if it's a notebook, even if it's just a steno pad, whatever. The ability to write things down, the ability to have that sort of one moment to yourself to get your ideas together is the most important thing. Some of the journal entries I put in day one, not necessarily paragraphs. It could be pictures. It could be video journal entries. It could be audio journal entries. Day one takes care of all that for me. I could put it up on the website. I could also put it on my phone. I could put many different ways of entering this stuff in. So it's very interconnected between the different ways of using day one. But it's really helped me without question. One of the things I do with day one is I write poetry, which is kind of what I brought up in the countdown. There was a thing called forward thinking, which I would love to read to you right now. This is something I wrote on May 8th of last year. All right, when things got crazy with the, here I go doing it again, the Backstreet Boys reunion tour, right? But also right in the heart of the weight loss journey, right around about the 1 year point of the sobriety, and right around the time where I realized that the gambling was not going to do me any good anymore in this life. So I wrote this. The rain hits the top of the house. I sit here with the lights barely on. I think about all that has been done and what is yet to come. I think about the people in my life, both old and new, the incredible things that they do, and how my spirit grew. The desk sits with papers of opportunities to be had, some of which are joyous, some of which may be mad. But as long as I look forward and not in the rear, I know that incredible things are to happen. The moments are near. Whether I'm here or somewhere else that remains to be seen, but I am close to be rid of what held me back, with a slate that is now clean. Appreciative and with love, open are my mind, my soul, and my heart. I'm ready for this beautiful reality. I'm ready to do my part. Hard work pays off. Hard decisions have been made. One step at a time I proceed, and the hard past has started to fade. That was, along with a lot of other poems I've written in my journal, I find it very cathartic for me just to write that sort of stuff down, put it in sort of poetry or even just prose. But to do that, to take those moments out for you to just be creative, but also take a very serious reflection on what you're experiencing, but also what you want to do, is the most important thing we can do. Couple more comments. Last time I played rain and thunder music to fall asleep. When the thunder goes off, 2 of my dogs barked and howled. Oh, that could be a problem. Jamie sleeps with meditation music, loves it. And then with respect to the poem, Sue says, love it. Love you. Thank you. Jamie loves that as well. Sue says, put that in the book. And it definitely is going in the book for sure. And then also say, that's like when we retie at night in the big book, buddy. Or retire is, I think, what you meant to say, sir. When we retire at night in the big book. Yes, absolutely. It's the most important thing we can do, whether it's a question of coming up with a gratefulness list or things that we want to tackle or whatnot. It's the most important thing we could do is journaling. And without that sort of connection, then going back to sort of a picture we talked about before, is like the train going off the tracks. We have to be honest with ourselves. Even if the entries are journal entries or video entries or audio entries, we just have to get it down somewhere. So we're taking care of this for ourselves. So, absolutely. I will definitely share that poem for sure. So let's talk about Thursday. Now we're back to 3 shows a week. Thursday night, we had a guest scheduled for Thursday, but I'm not sure if it's going to happen. And even if that's the case, well, I have a story to tell on Thursday. And it could be the story we talked about earlier in this show, in the sense that there are parts of this journey that I have not shared yet on this project yet, in this project and venture. But I plan to. And if it's not this Thursday, it will be sometime in the next few weeks for sure. But if I have the interview, well, we'll do the interview. If not, then we will talk about something that may start with the letter D. I'll just leave that as a tease. I would that every night and think things through how my day was and what would or could I have not better. Yeah, that's right. Sue says, thank you for the special first for year 3. Amazing, isn't it? It is. Every moment's a gift. It really is. And to do this and to do this show and, yeah. Marilyn says, wow, that was beautiful. We need to copyright that. I'm on it for sure. And Easy Reap says, I would read that every night. It's a good thought provoker. Yeah, a very good thought provoker for sure. All right, so Thursday, we have another episode at 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 Pacific. Maybe an interview, maybe a story about John's D word, which we will not talk about what the D word actually is, but you could probably figure that out. And then Friday, we have VF Talks at the new time of 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. So every show's time is moved now. So the Venture Forward is now Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And then VF Talks is Friday nights at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. But what I got to say is the same thing I say before the end of every Venture Forward VF Talks. If I could find my graphic. What happened here? Hang on. Oh, here we go. It moved down there for some weird reason. I say the same thing I say at the end of every Venture Forward VF Talks. Stay safe, stay sane, stay strong, stay sober. You're worth it. I'll see you Thursday night at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, for the next episode of the Venture Forward. Have a great night. Fly be free.